as the Vice President of Program Management. Um, he is an expert in helping to build great products and companies, and as part of that, an expert in also non-dilutive funding. So we've got a couple people in the waiting room that our um, colleague Dan will be letting in, and um, we're really excited about sharing the unpacking of the NIH SBIR program. We are also going to be talking about a number of other key elements in the SBIR world and things that branch outside of the SBIR world quickly. But today is really to unpack what's in the solicitation that's new, and what to be mindful of, footfalls to avoid, but moreover, how to take advantage of the great program that's been here. We feel particularly attuned and close to the um, SBIR program and across agencies, but in particular this year because when we were doing a webinar with Eric Blatt, who was instrumental in working with Senator Ernst and Young to get it approved, we um, the proposal that eventually became law was released on our webinar, which was like we couldn't plan that any better. So Eric was a great person, and if you're curious about any legal help, he's a great partner for early stage companies. So Eric Blatt at Scale um, is someone to look out for. Um, when the House of Representatives passed this into law, we were in the chamber. I was coincidentally in DC for something else and went to the chamber while the vote was going on and saw the vote pass, which was a special thing. And today we really wanted to walk through the details of the bill. So without further ado, I'm going to do a couple of quick preamble items, and then we'll get into the heart of it that Madam's going to walk us through on the solicitation details themselves. So let me share my screen and we'll get rolling. If you have questions along the way, please pose them in the chat. Um, if they're quick, we'll answer them in the chat. If they're not, we will um, save them for when we're done. Um, Before I jump into my part, I want to just encourage you to please visit our website for our blog. We regularly have thought leadership content there. There's a whole set of resources. If you hover your cursor over the resources menu, you'll get a mega menu of other options. As well, follow us on LinkedIn. We use that as a great mechanism to get a broader audience of information and insights. So please tag us in there. Um, and today, if everyone can see my screen, we're going to do a quick update funding, broadly speaking, in the life sciences and other industries as well. Jump in on the SBIR and talk a little bit about writing to win, and 2 seconds on Grant Engine. We, as a company and a firm, are here to save lives and extend the length of a quality life. Really here to protect our way of life as a country and as a society. We do that by getting you what I would say is one of, or if not the most important thing in your early stage company, which is cash. Um, we have a team of over 76 people, um, and we've got over 40 PhDs. We've got a number of things that make us better and different, but they all converge on really two outcomes, which is superior win rate. So 2 to 4 times higher than the national average. Now it's even more than that. Um, and an experience that clients enjoy, right? And of all the things you're going to do and build your company, writing grants has a particular flavor of difficulty. We have an over 90% satisfaction rating from our clients that is they are extremely happy. So we're really pleased about that. Quick slide on why you would go down this road at all for non-dilutive funding. There are big benefits to getting cash, as you know, but that is only one of the advantages. In as you build your company, um, you need to chart your development pathway. You need to build your R&D roadmap. Um, that we do that as we write your grant. We write the approach section, which is the R&D path for your proposal. That is the most difficult part of writing a winning proposal. That helps you significantly build your product. Um, Cash is very valuable, right? Equity markets are very difficult these days. And when you get a grant or a contract or any non-dilutive funding, it's non-dilutive, right? So you don't have to sell your shares. And perhaps as important, this validation, peer review at the NIH or any peer review remains the most valuable validation because those reviewers are independent. And investors look to that validation as a good housekeeping seal of approval, and you can use that in your fundraising rounds. So there's a lot of advantages to doing it, of which getting cash is only a part of it. So if you're wondering about whether you should do this, the benefits are significant, and they are not just in getting you cash, they are helping you architect your product roadmap. They're helping you get equity, in particular when you're successful by working with Grant Engine. So the big news is that the SBIR is funded through 2031 across all agencies. They've added a strategic breakthrough award that's up to $30 million, which is really exciting. Madhav's going to walk us through the particulars there by institute in the NIH. SBIR mills are out of favor. Each agency decides what the cap is for the number of proposals that any principal investigator or company, depending on the agency, can submit. NIH is 9. So you get to submit 9 proposals a year now. Foreign risk assessment's a big deal previously, continues to be a big deal, and we help you wring out that risk early. It's too late once you've submitted your grant. um, there's a lot. I've got a slide here in a little bit that talks about what's going to happen between now and the end of the government year end, which is September 30th. But this slide looks at just a quick Gantt chart of the different agencies of when things are opening and when things are closing. The key date that Madhav will touch on as well for the NIH is that magic button there, which is August 5th, which is when solicitations open for the next deadline. There's a lot of funding here for life science companies outside of the NIH, including the Department of Defense, CARB-X, the CDMRP program, foundation funding, which is quite varied and exciting. And that is true in areas. So this is a quick update. Of course, these slides will be distributed to you. We're live on the NIH SBIR. We've got a set of very effective and relevant relationships at ARPA-H for transformative funding, things that are 10 years out. BARDA is also active through BARDA Drive, through their hubs, accelerator networks, as well as Big BARDA. I want to talk for a second about the pause that we've all experienced in the last 6 months and what that means for what's about to happen. This data shows the notice of award date awards by dollar volume spread by calendar quarter, and then calls out September. So what you're seeing here is that 13% of notice of awards happen in the first 6 months of the government year, right? This is for the last 6 years. So if you add what happens in the fourth quarter of the calendar year and the first quarter of the calendar year, that's 13% that happens through March 31st. Of course, the government year starts right here on October 1st, right? So in the first 6 months of the government year, the NIH awards 13% of the dollars, okay? In the first 9 months of the year, the NIH awards 37% of the dollars, okay? So you're sitting here like July 1st and you got Q3, that's when almost two-thirds of the money gets distributed, right? And September alone is over a third of the entire year. So where are we today? We're sitting here June 5th, right? And basically nothing's happened all year, okay? All government year, right? So far. How bad is that? Well, it's not great because normally a third of the money has already been, roughly a third or less than a third has been distributed, before June 11th in a given year. But the NIH is very good at allocating awards. And if you submitted in September or earlier of last year, you got a competitive score, you're getting JIT awards. So that is very big. And so I wouldn't worry that nothing's happened. What I would worry about is what's about to happen and focus on submitting quality submissions. The last slide I want to share here is a supply and demand chart where the supply is in the blue bar. This is the number of submissions that were made to the NIH SBIR in blue. And then the average win rate if you look at the purple, is all of them together. It tells the same story regardless of type of grant. What this says is that AI is writing a lot of grants in 2024 and 2025, and a lot of grants are worse in quality. Okay. AI is writing a lot of grants, and just generally the grants are worse in quality, and that means the win rate is going down. Like that number in 2025 is the lowest win rate the SBIR program at the NIH has ever seen in its 44-year history, like ever. And what that says is a very clear message, which is submit quality proposals. You will not be able to make it up in volume, okay? You will be able to make it up in quality. Okay, the last thing I want to share before I hand it over to Madhav is why now? Why submit in September? Because that's going to be 3 submission cycles. Why not wait till January? And there are 2 primary reasons why. The first is that the September and the January cycle will be evaluated together, in council. So it doesn't matter if you wait until January, it's going to be in the same mix for the same reasons we talked about when awards happen. The second big reason is that if you submit in January, you're not going to have a summary statement back in time to do a resubmission by April, right? That 3 months from January 5 to April 5 is the shortest window. And so now if you do have to resubmit, hopefully you don't, but if you do have to resubmit, now you got to wait till September of 2027, which is forever from now. All right. So those are 2 reasons why you want to think about September for your next submission. And think about submitting earlier in that window of when it's open for reasons we can talk about later. So I'm going to turn it over to Meta, but hopefully you've heard a little bit, and we'll get to the questions after Meta does his piece. But I wanted to share why do this at all? Why do this now? And we'll talk, as you go, hopefully you're getting a feeling or a sense of why work with Grant Engine. We've been doing this for going on 10 years. We've hired through the last 15 months because our business has grown, despite the SBIR being on pause, because we've gone after a lot of non-SBIR. We have an excellent team. We have an excellent process. We're continually making it better. We are here for your success. We're here to get you money, get your product developed, get it in market to improve the standard of care. That's why we exist. And I would encourage you to talk to us. You get an SME call without having to pay for anything, and that SME call is deeply valuable. So without further ado, I'm really delighted to hand it over to Madhav um, to walk through the magic that is the new SBR program.
Yep. Thank you,
Sir?
Sam. Yeah. So I just want to initially touch upon the SBIR STTR program and focus on what it is for, just in case there are folks who are not as aware of what this program actually funds. So through the NIH, the main goals of the program is to stimulate technological innovation. They want small businesses to be involved in this technological innovation and use those small businesses to be able to meet the federal research and development needs. They want to continue to foster as well as encourage participation by these small business concerns in the innovation that they are expecting to get out into the market. And the fourth reason is to increase private sector commercialization of innovations that are derived through getting money from the federal government, right? Through the research and development dollars that are set aside for these programs. So as you can see in the table below, the two main programs, that you see through the NIH are the SBIR and the STTR programs. The SBIR obviously stands for Small Business Innovation Research. And the STTR is the Small Business Technology Transfer. One of the things that you would notice from the table below there is that there is a significant difference in the allotted budget for these two programs. So 3.2% of the total NIH budget is set aside for the SBIR program. Only 0.45% of the total budget is set aside for the STTR program. And how this becomes significant is that there is a good chance that based on the kind of proposal that you have, you might fit either under the SBIR or the STTR program better, right? Obviously, with more money in the SBIR program, you would be enticed to want to apply for that. But in some instances, the STTR might actually be a better choice for you. And this usually comes true when there is significant involvement of a nonprofit research institution in the work that is being proposed through these proposals. And as you can see, there's some other work requirements and principal investigator requirements that are listed here as well, which we'll probably touch upon later in the slides. Sam, next slide, please. So there are many phases of development that the small business program actually funds through the SBIR and STTR solicitations. So the most common ones that you would probably have heard of are the phase one and phase two. Phase one grants generally support feasibility and proof of concept studies that you might be doing with either your device, your drug of choice, or a diagnostic. It doesn't matter. Phase two grants generally, are more money and therefore support optimization, getting your product closer into first in human studies that you might be doing, or even to actually fund the first in human studies that you might be proposing. There is a third mechanism under the SBIR, the main SBIR STTR solicitations, which is called a fast track. This is essentially a combination of phase one and phase two grants. Now, there are some very specific requirements you will need to meet to be competitive with a fast track grant. These are some of the things that we work with our clients to make sure that you are, going to be successful with an application like that, rather than, waste your time and money trying to put in an application and guessing whether this is going to be successful at the NIH. The other program, the other phase that Sam quickly mentioned about, which actually came about through the new SBIR reauthorization bill, is the phase 2B strategic breakthrough grants, right? These are essentially bridge grants because you have considerable, significant amount of research and development work still needed before the product actually gets to market. And that's why you have the big $30 million numbers that are being quoted as part of these phase 2B strategic breakthroughs. Now, for most people that's a huge number. You would, your eyes kind of enlarge as you think about it. But as we go through this, you will notice that, NIH is probably not going to support you at that level. It's the actual budgets are going to be significantly lower than that. The fifth phase that we talk about is called the commercialization readiness pilot. So this is a mechanism that NIH uses to help those products get some technical assistance and commercialization support so that you're actually, kind of crossing through that valley of death to some extent to get your products towards that commercial phase. Recently, end of May into early June, four different solicitations were released by the NIH for these different phases. So the SBIR STTR Omnibus, as you can see, there are two solicitations that have been released, the 100 and the 102. The 100 is the SBIR solicitation, 102 is the STTR solicitation. They are essentially equivalent solicitations with some requirement differences between the SBIR and STTR program, as you saw in the table before. They also have released two solicitations, one for the Phase 2B Strategic Breakthrough Awards and one for the Commercialization Readiness Pilot. Next slide, Sam. Thank you. So in terms of the NIH SBIR STTR solicitations, one of the big changes that you need to focus on is that there's now just one solicitation, whether it is a clinical trial or a non-clinical trial application. In previous iterations of these solicitations, there used to be two different solicitations for each program, where one said clinical trial required and another one said clinical trial optional. So moving forward, there is just the one solicitation, no matter whether you are proposing a clinical trial in your application or there's no clinical trial. As Sam mentioned, based on the solicitations, the earliest submission date is going to be August 5th, 2026. So if you have your entire grant package ready by August 5th of 2026, you will be able to submit to any one of those four solicitations, and thereby, in a sense, guaranteeing yourself a chance of getting the study section of choice, right? The division that actually assigns grants to different study sections, which is CSR at NIH, does do it as and when they come in. So this is one of the reasons why we suggest that people apply, for their grants early and not wait till the September 5th deadline. The next application due date, as listed on the solicitation, is September 5th, 2026. But as somebody mentioned in the asked in the chat, due to Labor Day, the actual deadline is going to be September 8th, 2026, because 5th is a Saturday and 7th is Labor Day, which is a Monday. So September 8th, 2026 on Tuesday will be the next due date for these SBIR and STTR solicitations. Most of these have very specific eligibility and registration requirements. With regards to eligibility, you have to be a for-profit company. You need to be a small business concern as set by the SBA guidelines. There are some very specific ownership requirements. There are also 4 registrations that you have to do as part of the requirements, to be able to apply for an SBIR STTR. as you read through some of these policies, there might be a little bit of guesswork that you might have to do by working with us, by having us talk you through the strategy of how to go forth with this. We are able to give you guidance as to whether you're eligible to apply for these grants or not. There's also significant principal investigator and division of work requirements. Again, things that, may or may not make sense as you read through the solicitations. But again, since we have um, many years of experience doing this, we are able to guide our clients very, in a very smooth fashion through understanding what the requirements are, how you can be compliant, and make sure that your proposals are being reviewed and your chance of funding is still active once that review process happens. Next slide, please, Sam. So some of the key differences that we want to highlight from the NIH SBIR STTR omnibus solicitation, as it's called. STTRs are now accepting what are called direct to phase two applications. This is only at the NIH. Previously, STTR solicitations did not accept direct to phase two. You had to have a phase one grant from the NIH to be able to apply for a phase two renewal application, as it's called. But in the most recent solicitation, they have allowed for direct to phase two applications. So this means that if you have phase one equivalent data, when I'm talking about phases here, it's definitely about the SBIR phases, not about the clinical trial phases. So just want to clarify that. But if you do have phase one equivalent feasibility or proof of concept data, you're able to use the STTR mechanism to apply for a direct to phase two application. The max budgets, as set aside by the SBA guidelines, have gone up this year. So for a phase one, it's 323,000 and change. For a phase two grant, it's 2.15 and change. Now, as you read through the solicitation for the omnibus, you would see that different institutes at the NIH provide what are called waiver budget limits. So as long as you fit under one of the waiver topics, which is a priority topic for that institute, you are able to ask for a higher budget limit, right? In this particular set of solicitations, it's made very clear in the actual solicitation itself. There's a table that suggests what the increased numbers are. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We are more than happy to walk you through all of these different requirements. Foreign organizations and international collaborations are no longer allowed, through the new solicitation. So foreign organizations were never allowed even before, but now they have starting to crack down on any international collaborations as well. So foreign subawards and subcontracts are definitely not allowable under the new SBIR STTR solicitation. Foreign risk assessment is getting significant scrutiny as well. For some of you, at least, you probably, if you have applied for grants in the past, you probably have gone through this as part of their JIT requirements, where you have submitted a foreign disclosure form. In some unfortunate cases, you've probably also received a risk assessment back where it said that you failed it and therefore you are no longer eligible to get the grant. Unfortunately, that is a black box that we don't know exactly what they found. But it is important, as you work with us, we'll walk you through what some of the main concerns will be and make sure that we are taking mitigating steps before we even submit these grants. Clinical trials, again, since we have just the one solicitation for both clinical trials and non-clinical trial applications, it is very important to note that not all institutes accept clinical trial proposals through the omnibus. So there are some very specific institutes that will not accept it through the omnibus, and therefore, if you are choosing to go after a particular indication that falls within the priority of that institute, you will need to find a different mechanism to be able to fund your studies. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as I mentioned with clinical trials, we want to make sure that, for one, you are actually proposing either human subjects research or a clinical trial, because that kind of determines whether you are able to use the omnibus as a way to get money from the NIH. So the NIH decision tool, which is linked here, and when these when the slides are available to you, you'll be able to actually navigate to that website. You should be able to determine if your application actually has any human research study or a clinical trial. One thing to always keep in mind is that there is a higher burden of documents if you are proposing human subjects research or clinical trials. The human subjects docs, which is up to about 8 to 10 additional documents that are required, has always been part of the application. But this year, they have added something called the regulatory plan, and paying attention to some of these new requirements is going to be very critical as you submit these applications for the most recent deadline that's going to show up. There are other resources also available through the NIH where you can find information about how you develop statistical studies and study designs if you're not too familiar with it. Other clinical trial requirements that will help you kind of design, the documents that actually will be required to be submitted. Next slide, please, Sam. So moving on, we're talking a little bit about the Phase 2B Strategic Breakthrough Awards as well. We touched upon how it was part of a new initiative through the recent SBIR reauthorization bill for Phase 2 projects that are going to require extraordinary time and effort beyond what a standard Phase 2 is able to provide, which is about that 2 years and 2 years and $2.15 million of support. That's what these Phase 2B Strategic Breakthrough Awards are meant to fund. They can be up to $30 million. And you would consider this essentially as a second Phase 2 award supporting that significant amount of research and development that still needs to be done. Understand as you read through the solicitation, there are fewer participating NIH institutes again. So, which means that if your indication falls under an institute that does not participate in the Strategic Breakthrough Award, you probably do not want to apply to this because you're likely not going to pass through the phase, through the review phase. Some of the requirements you need to have received an SBIR or STTR Phase 2 award to be able to submit for a Phase 2B Strategic Breakthrough Award. And you can only get one Phase 2B award per Phase 2 that you have received prior. As I mentioned, the actual budget limit set aside by the SBA guidelines is 30 million, but it varies by the institutes at the NIH, and they're considerably less. What we have seen is the highest amount is at the National Cancer Institute, and they are willing to support Phase 2B strategic awards in the tune of about $15 million. But it also is going to probably come with a lot of scrutiny to make sure that you're going to be using that money appropriately. The other big thing about the Phase 2B awards is that you have to show the NIH that you can get 100% matching funds. And this needs to be through new private capital or new non-SBIR or STTR funding. So unless you're able to show the 100% matching funds, you're not going to be able to get a Phase 2B Strategic Breakthrough Award. The way at the time of submission, the way you show this would be by getting letters of support. But as you go through the just-in-time process or the negotiation process with the NIH, they will be requiring further documents that really show, that you are getting that 100% matching funds. Probably the best way is if you're getting private capital is to show term sheets because that is going to show that amount of money that you're likely to get from a private capital investor. Period of performance for Phase 2Bs cannot exceed 4 years. Again, the same thing as the omnibus solicitation, foreign collaborations and foreign subawards and foreign organizations are definitely not allowed to be part of a Phase 2B grant. Next slide, please. Also want to touch upon quickly the commercialization readiness pilot. So the CRPs, as they're called, they support work that requires significant outsourcing, right? So if you have a lot of R&D work still to be done, you're probably better off, going after a Phase 2B. CRPs are meant to support that technical assistant and the commercialization support that we are, that would be helpful to any company. Again, just as the Phase 2B, there are fewer participating institutes at the NIH. And similar to the Phase 2Bs, you need to have received an SBIR or STTR Phase 2 or a phase 2B to be able to apply for a CRP. The budget for a CRP is 4.19 as set aside by the SBA guidelines. But again, this, as with everything else, varies by institute. So you will need to look at the table with this, which is on the solicitation, to determine what an institute is likely to fund. There's no cost sharing required with commercialization readiness pilot, so which means it's probably, more suitable in some instances, especially if you cannot get that 100% matching funds. The period of performance is not to exceed 3 years. Again, foreign collaboration sub-awards are not allowed. As I mentioned just further up, SBCs, again, even though you're significantly outsourcing the work, the small business concern still needs to perform a substantive role in the actual research planning and the research design, but you can move a lot of the work outside of the company. Next slide, please. All right. That was all about the NIH. NSF also has an SBIR STTR program. They have also released a new solicitation. There's also detailed instructions that you might want to read through their PAPPG document, because that's where they give you instructions on how to prepare the documents required for an NSF submission. In the case of NSF, they are not just healthcare related. They actually take on a wide variety of technologies, all the way from AI and robotics to biomanufacturing, to healthcare. So please go visit the NSF website to see if you have a technology that might actually fit their priorities. They are looking to fund high risk technologies and cutting edge products. So if you have an incremental improvement in your technology from what is the standard of care, NSF is likely not to fund that. The main purpose of NSF funding is to make sure that the technologies are improving quality of life and are contributing to the nation's economy and security. The next rolling deadline for the NSF is July 27, 2026. From there, it's going to be a recurring deadline, which is the first Wednesday in November, the first Thursday in March, and first Wednesday in July. The main available scopes are phase 1, phase 2, and fast track, just like at the NIH. But funding is also available through supplemental awards like the phase 2B and the strategic breakthrough. For most of these, to get the supplemental awards, you would have to get a phase 1 or a phase 2 award prior so that you can apply for the supplemental awards. NSF has uh, a, a project fit assessment tool on their website. Again, you can go in there and try and see if your particular technology actually fits NSF's priorities and whether you are ready to be able to apply for an NSF grant. It's a set of 6 questions. Unfortunately, if any of the answers are no, NSF suggests that you're not currently ready to apply for an NSF SBIR. It really doesn't give you a whole lot of information as to what you can do to become eligible to apply for it. So this is where somebody like us at Grant Engine, we are able to work with you, strategize with you, do this SME call as Sam mentioned earlier, and make sure that we can find a strategy where in 3 to 6 months, maybe in a couple of months, depending on your stage of development, we are able to move you towards being able to apply for an NSF grant. Next slide, please, Sam. So as I mentioned, there's 3 main phases here. Phase 1 is the most, it is, so at the NSF, it is a phased program. So if you need to go for a phase 2 award, you have had to have gotten an NSF phase 1 award in the past. And to get an NSF phase 1, the first step is to actually submit what is called a project pitch. You get an invite from the program director at NSF, and then you have 2 submission deadlines to apply to put in your full proposal. And once your full proposal is submitted, it goes through the review process as normal for any grants, and you get a funding decision 6 to 9 months after. Phase 2 awards, you need to have a phase 1 award, and there's some criteria as to when you are able to submit for it, right? And it needs to be submitted within 6 to 24 months of starting a phase 1. Fast tracks, they started this as a pilot program. I think they're continuing with it, but unfortunately, this also has some very specific requirements. One of the main requirements is that it has to have the company has to have some NSF lineage. So either the company or the technology has to have NSF lineage, which means it probably needed to get an NSF research grant in the past before you are eligible to apply for a fast track SBIR STTR grant through the NSF. Success is usually based on their three broad criterias, which is intellectual merit, broader impacts, and commercial potential. And again, the NSF applications are pretty straightforward, so are NIH applications, but there are a lot of compliance issues that you will face as you read through the couple of different documents that give you instructions on how to apply for this. So, which is the reason why we always say, talk to us. We are more than happy to work with you and get you the right answers and strategies to move forward. I think those were all my slides, Sam. Over to you.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you, Madhav. Really insightful and useful. I've been, as you can see, answering questions as we've been going. Um, at this point, I'd like to do the first poll question, if we can, to just get a little more engagement from the audience. We're ticking on some record numbers on the questions, which is great. Um, but the first question is, where is your company in the SBIR process, or thinking about doing it, having a phase one and on down the line? So I just wanted to get a quick read of where folks are in the life cycle and look at the results to just start to get a sense of where we are. So we're at over 65 responses at this point, still coming in. So please come in. What's encouraging here is that almost 30% of you haven't started or you're exploring it, which is really exciting. This world of non-dilutive funding can be somewhat challenging. You may have done it in another company, you may be already aware, but it it does have its peculiarities. Um, and the way we at Grand Engine approach working with clients is that we're really here to help you get a product in market to improve the standard of care. We're here to save lives. And we've learned the hard way by doing it for almost a decade of how to go get this grant funding. So we know the grant funding, but we're really here to help you build a great product. So we've got this good awareness of how these programs work in the context of what this means for your actual product development. So, Dan, thank you. We've got almost 60% response rate. Why don't you publish those results? Um, and I'll speak to the maybe you guys could have seen that all the way through. I don't know, Dan, if you just shared this, but in any event, um, many of you are ready for the next grant funding mechanism. If you have a phase two in hand, that's really exciting because you're setting yourselves up for, um, you know, 4 to 20 million dollars in funding in the strategic breakthrough through the phase 2B or the commercial readiness pilot. So we have specialized in getting that funding for our clients. Those are different games to play than the phase 2B and the CRP are different games than the phase two. So we know how to do that really well as well. So and an SME call does not have any risk or cost to you. So we'd encourage you to engage with us if you want to do these larger awards as well. So that's great. Dan, I'm going to do two more slides and then we'll do the second poll. We've got about 15 minutes left. So this slide speaks to how do you write to win? How do you be more competitive in a tougher environment? And we believe that and we're planning on things being net more competitive at 20 to 30%. That kind of maps the chart you saw earlier for a bunch of reasons. There's just more submissions that makes it harder. Those submissions um, are some of those submissions are pulling larger award amounts for roughly the same level of appropriation of dollars. So those strategic breakthroughs, the increased budget amounts that have been named are on average more dollars per award for the same total budget at the NIH. So that means there's going to be fewer awards. And we've seen this pattern over time. Things are getting harder. So here are some things you can do that we do, and we do a million things more than this, but these are some things about what you can do, whether you engage with grant engine or not. Um, Reviewers are busy and and have a lot going on. So curb appeal is a really useful thing. Make your grant accessible to be able to just enter it and it looks attractive to be able to open it and want to read it. High figure to text ratio, not a wall of text. Um, are you telling a profound, compelling story in a very simple way? Right? Do reviewers get it very quickly? And are they excited about it? Right. The approach section is always the toughest score, put that in quotes, but winning grants, that's still the toughest score. And you'll see some data on the next slide about what that is, but focus on the approach.
Sam, I don't think you're sharing your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're getting all the knowledge, but none of the pictures. Thank you, Medev. I'm looking at my screen while I'm talking too. All right, there we go. You'll get these slides as well. But the clarity, the ability for a busy reviewer to understand what you're saying is a high predictor of success. If you're going to get after what we see, winning grants are all around winners. So address the weakest part of your proposal first and keep after it until you have an overall great proposal. Get external help from a credible source that can have a big, big impact. Of course, this is easier said than done. And we know that because we do it all the time. We'd be delighted to help you in that journey. This is data from our VP of Research, Dr. Kristen Scott, which speaks to, of all the 5 criteria that you see here, you've got winners in green with error bars in the criterion score for each, and the score for losers in blue. And there's a little good overlap of significance because everything you're working on is probably important. There's a little bit more spread on innovation. Winners, low score wins, as you know, like golf. So a little bit more spread in innovation. Investigators, we know this to be a driver of outcomes, but people don't want to be ornery to the PI in scoring. That's what our perception is. But look at approach. Environment is also relevant, but look at approach, right? Your approach section is very much spread. And in losing grants, you get hammered on the approach section. And in winning grants, you don't get hammered as much, but they're still pretty tight. They're not as low as innovation or environment, right? And so if you nail the approach section, you have a greater chance of having success. Um, let me so hopefully that all makes logical sense. The approach section is a very hard thing to get right, and we know how to do that extremely well when you work with us. Let's put up poll question number 2, if you would please, Dan. And this question asks what we were talking about earlier, which is when are you going to get after it? And we're asking this question and we call it mid-June, and so it makes sense that 3/4 of you are looking at September, and the balance basically isn't sure yet, hasn't decided. So let's flash up the answer here if we haven't shared it already, Dan. I don't think it's going to change the outcome here. And in terms of timing, like like you said, over three-quarters are going after September, but some are thinking about January. Um, if you markedly have a more competitive submission, January is the right answer. You want to be competitive, not necessarily just go in early. So that's really useful. We've got a few questions, so I'm going to run through the last couple of slides that I have, and then we can wrap up any questions. At a company level, you want to play to win. Um, the way you do that is you diversify your funding and you increase the volume of quality submissions. So go after federal, state, nonprofit, and global. We've got a sister company, a friendly company of ours called Streamline that has a really good tool called Evaluate, which you can evaluate any solicitation through that module. That's hyperlinked there. Um, and then one of the questions that came up was, do you help with equity? And the answer is yes. We have a subscription to PitchBook, and as an active client, you get access to that data. That is the best source for investor contact information, pre-money evaluation, et cetera. So that's number one is more and diversified sources. Number two, um, go after quality. All right. Don't go after volume, go after quality. Quality equals money, volume equals time. And you'd rather have money than burn time. Be persistent. Grant Engine, when we win 44%, when we win it all, 44% of the time, it happens on the first award, which we're really excited about. Um, but we also know the value of being persistent. Um, broaden and diversify relationships at the PO, at other funding sources. There's a payment management system that has become more and more difficult. Accounting rules have gotten more challenging. Think about Grant Engine for your accounting needs as well. You can see that on our website. And then lastly, there's a tighter scrutiny on foreign risk assessment, than there has ever been. Um, so that's very relevant. The I got two more slides here. Um, this is a slide that speaks to long-term funding strategies, of which we've found at least six. If, uh, bear with me for a hot second. If you go to our website and here's our website. If you go to our website and you hover over resources and you go under win, so this is find, win, manage. If you go under win and you look under those customer funding models, you can see each of those six right there. And there's a slide on each of them here. These are strategies that we've found to work in client situations. So those are very exciting. And they will also be in the presentation in the appendix. If you want to work with Grant Engine, we will ask you, we're happy to have a conversation to talk about our economics, go into more detail about our differentiated process we go through to get you funding, and um, and answer any initial questions. We really ask you before or after that to complete a product funding strategy questionnaire. That questionnaire, and um, Dan, if you could put up poll number 3 now, that would be great. Um, the That product funding strategy questionnaire gives us, that's under an NDA. We're happy to sign an NDA, and we recommend you do that to protect your information. That gives us a good amount of detail that supports doing a subject matter expert call. We spend hours preparing for those calls, and we spend 45 to 90 minutes on those calls, walking through your product, assessing competitiveness, where you would submit, assessing readiness, and helping you position your product to get a win. That is free, it is highly valuable, and we recommend it. To get that, um, we ask you to send us an email on funding@grandengine.com. Um, so that's really what we wanted to walk through today. Thank you for filling out the last survey. Dan, let's keep that open. We've got 26 more questions um, that were posed. So let me see. There's few that I found along the way that I wanted to mention. The first was around Payline. And if you just Google SBIR Payline, our blog post will come up as the first natural search, and or you could go to contact us. And this blog post is very useful. This is the best source of um, where your pay line is by institute, and that depending on your impact score, that'll tell you whether you're getting funding or not, or how close you are. We are always updating this. The last one here was January, where nothing really happened, and it's still just now happening. So as we learn things every few days, as things come forward, we're going to update this blog post. So that was a question that came up, or like, what does my impact score mean? So I wanted to mention that. And let's get the other questions that we had here. Budget waiver topics. Madhav, can you prep the link or maybe just put it in the chat? Maybe you've already done this for where the actual topics are for budget waivers.
Yeah, I haven't done that. We can make sure it's included as part of the slide deck.
Part of it inside the slide deck. Okay, great. So we'll get that for you. But we'll send this PowerPoint out and it'll be hyperlinked there. Um, we've answered a few. Madhav's been answering questions. You will indeed get the slide, Manav. I'm just looking through the survey, the questions. If we're at time, obviously, if you need to peel off, please do so. But we're going to get through the rest of these questions and then we'll put a bow on things. Margaret, if you're still on the call, please email us if that didn't answer the question. I don't think that question was clear. Thank you, Greg, for the kind words. International, stay away from that. US-based money. Yeah, Amrish, you're asking, how does Grand Engine charge for our services? So we don't want to mention prices here on the webinar, but there's a few things that I will say. Please do reach out to us. We do charge an upfront and a success fee. We know every dollar matters in an early stage company. We've lived this as well. Our upfronts are not insignificant, but they are definitely below our cost to serve. And so we only make a profit when you get an award and we're able to earn our success fee based on you getting that funding. So those are some parameters around how we work. Madhav's been a champion here answering all these questions. Yep. Okay, Thomas is asking, I thought they did away with pay lines. They are saying that, um, but I don't believe it. So we'll see. But I think pay lines are, there's no other way to do it. And I think there's a weight of evidence, and I think pay lines, some have said they're going to get rid of them, but we haven't yet seen that. So I think for that reason, you want to know if you're in the running or not. And Paline is a good benchmark, although things do shift. Um, Deb is asking, should we still expect a large funding notice to occur prior to the 8/5 submission opportunity date? I don't I don't know exactly what that means, um, but there will be awards happening up until September 30th. We don't expect a new solicitation to be issued um, between now and the end of the government year. Um, Christine's asking, is it possible to apply for, thank you, Aaron, by the way, good to see you. Is it possible to apply for a breakthrough award in a different institute than the phase two? That's a good question. And I don't know, Madhav, if you know the answer to that one. I believe it's yes with permission.
Sorry, what was the question? I was busy answering.
Is if you got a phase two from, let's say, NHLBI, can you go after NIGMS for the phase 2B?
Yeah, that's where you would have a conversation with NIGMS and get sort of verbal permission from the PO to do that.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. Okay. Madhav has answered all these questions already. Program relevance to move up or down regardless of pay lines. Okay. Yes, I think so, generally speaking. Um, yeah, so Fidan, you missed the part where we're explaining how we charge for clients. So it is a hybrid of an upfront and a success fee. Our upfronts are below our cost to serve, and they're not tiny, they're not insignificant, but they are more value. You're getting way, way more value, more benefit, more likelihood to win, more product development progress, more commercialization insights for what we are charging. So it's a great deal. We only make a profit. We lose money on upfronts. We only make a profit when we get you funding. Catherine Phillips, thank you for the shout out that the SME call is helpful and insightful. We appreciate that from someone that has lived that lovely experience. Um, appreciate that. Um, get scored. Amen. Fees that can be in the grant budget. Deborah, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but um, the
I think you can put your success fee in the budget itself. There's a line item for it. Am I incorrect on that?
understand now. You are precisely correct. And there is a blog post on that, which I will um, put in the chat that we've got on it, but it is absolutely an allowable expense. The nuance is that it's not a line item. It just goes into the indirect line or via profit. So I'm going to put that in your thread here. But if you go to that blog post, that'll give you the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, where that's allowed. Um, but it's a great point that the grant will pay the success fee. So that's a good deal. And
And it,
here's the
and it
other.
makes sense because you're like you said, you're putting all the staffing time in to get the application in its best form and submitted on time and properly to the portal. You're helping to review summary statements in some cases for resubmissions. So that's just a straight burn on you. And even if companies sometimes could match in, so you could put part of the fee into your application, justify it, and have a set aside for Grant Engine as a vendor to the applicant. So you can
Yeah, that's
cut
right.
if
Yeah.
you
Oh, yep. Yeah, absolutely. You don't need to name us in the budget. You don't need to have a line item in the budget because it's part of indirect. Indirect is just a pool of funds for reasons we can go into later, but it is an allowable
cap,
cost.
but that's cap, Sam, right? And like there's a cap on it now with it. What is it even? I don't
It's
know.
like 30. If you look at indirect rate plus profit, it's a as a percentage of the total award you're going to get, it's about 35%.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Between 40% indirect rate and 7% profit, you have to add indirect. But that's, yeah, it's a good amount. It's a good amount
Yeah, I
of,
thought they were pushing, I thought they were moving to limit that to a lower.
they were trying, and those lawsuits have been converging out. It's a good point, actually. We have recommended a lower indirect rate in the past and
Mhm.
like down to 15%.
So
That state of play is
it just looks good, and it looks good.
it yeah, the reviewers aren't supposed to look at budgets, but humans, right? So I would say it's a good point, actually. But I think the short story is that the grant allowable cost to cover our success fee is way more than our success fee. So you're covered. And I would recommend reaching out to us and engaging on what your indirect rate wants to be given state of play. I think lawsuits are now getting settled, getting adjudicated. And so I think we may see some softening on that desire to go down to a lower indirect rate. But it's very much a thoughtful exercise. And we don't, so that would mean it's situational for you. And that would mean please talk to us about it. Um, uh, let's see. Christine's, I appreciate everyone sticking, the others sticking around. Christine's asking, have you heard, and Matt, jump in here. Have you heard of, you cannot apply for a phase 2B for a topic covered by a previous ARPA H solicitation? I don't know that that's actually true. You cannot double dip, right? If you've got grant money or federal funding money for scope X, you can't get additional money for scope X because you already got paid for it. But ARPA H is early and raw. I could see the NIH doing something for something that ARPA H is soliciting money for, but not the other way around. ARPA H is going to be in areas that NIH won't even touch. So I don't know if that answers that question, but we can talk more about that, Christine, if you'd like to, about your specific situation. Um, okay, Matt, I'm not addressing the items. So Duke is bringing up a good point that probably many people are feeling. Foreign risk assessment is stressing me out. Um, yeah, you're right. We feel that too. It's like it's a thing. And I'll just say something that is going to sound as obnoxious as it actually is this is on purpose. Okay, this is the goal of what they're trying to do, which is to rattle everyone's cage so that you don't even think about giving money to foreign governments, so that it's more nationalistic. So it's stressful. This is what the certain factions of your United States government call a feature, not a bug. So I hear you and I feel that too, Duke, and I'm sure others are feeling it too. And you're right to feel that way. Try to recognize it as they're not coming after you personally. This is the state of play in our government right now. And if you think about it like I sometimes try and think about it like it's a game that you have to understand the rules and play within the rules and know which rules can be bent a little and not broken. And so I think, is the government being more careful and being appropriate? That was also in the bill. Like this somewhat reckless decision making around you don't get your award because of foreign risk assessment, and it was really phantom or nothing. There is language in the bill that requires the government to be more judicious and I'll say objectively fair. Um, I'll put that in quotes. Um, and they're not going to tell you that's still going to be the case. Although actually that part, sorry, that part is there is a request that there be more transparent. So I think it's going to get better for in that regard. Um, but I would just say overall, understand the rules, and it's stressful, but we can help you navigate through those through those challenges. Um, Peer review. Yeah, well, 6 or 9, that's a good question. We'll get back on that, and we'll do it on a subsequent webinar or post a blog. Um, and thank you, Duke. I appreciate the kind words as well that it is axe swinging. A scalpel would be much more appropriate. So I appreciate those kind words that we supported your foreign risk assessment. So those, I think, are all the questions, believe it or not, that we had. Dan Garcia kindly put in the email address. We're still at 60 folks. Hopefully some of you are still listening. But um, why don't we put a wrap on this webinar with our thanks. Please reach out to us. We are here and we are here for your success. We're going to have some really interesting new tools that are free and for your use that we're going to be putting out on LinkedIn. So keep an eye out for those. Um, and I want to say thank you. Um, Sarah, I appreciate you've got another call, right? Okay, we'll reach out to you. Um, a private message. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It's always a pleasure to see you. Madav, rockstar job as usual. And have a wonderful rest of the week, everyone. Happy hunting. Get some funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
See ya. Thanks. Bye.